When often it comes to talking about the Conservative parties, one of the big reasons why they are splitting so much, why there are just so many groups, is because the Conservatives seem to really be afraid of actually trying to provide answers to the big questions of our time. You've got inflation that is running rampant, and Rishi Sunak, if he wanted to, could do quite a lot. There are lots of economists out there who have said Rishi Sunak could do this, he could do this, he could do that. There's a ton of economists out there with different opinions as to what Rishi Sunak could do. But as I've said before, Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have basically just decided to cross their fingers and hope that inflation comes down. That is essentially their plan. Effectively, just doing nothing. And as we've said before, just doing nothing becomes a point where it becomes, well, your political statement that you are doing nothing to bring down inflation. And the other big question, of course, very, very quickly coming up is what do the Conservatives really do about net zero? Because I've said that there is a group of Green Tories who are very, very much in favour for really going into net zero and can see the benefits of going into net zero, of the new economic possibilities, the massive boost to environmental stuff. But of course, to do that, you would need subsidies, you would need regulations, all of which the vast majority of the rest of the Conservative Party seemed very, very much opposed to. Some are in favour of the economic possibilities that net zero would bring, but are not in favour of, well, doing the subsidies, which would help speed up those economic benefits much, much faster, or even bringing in the regulations. Like I say, the Tory party is split. Even on this very idea of net zero, there seems to be no real big consensus that this is the way that they want to go. Now, we're not going to go over this article today, over Conservative Home, but I really want to highlight it because at the moment, there is a sense, or at least one of the many rumors, that the Conservatives are trying to soothe and ease their egos as to how they lost so many local council seats at the last local elections, was that we went too much into net zero, that net zero has not really been effective. It hasn't helped us. And ultimately, it was what led to our big election losses. Now, this is very much being spread, and very much so, by the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, not surprisingly, because they do not want to do anything with net zero, and they have firmly put the blame on the local election losses directly at the doorstep of net zero. Basically, just go, hey, we as a Conservative Party should not focus into net zero. Now, funnily enough, as I said before, remember the time when we covered the Australian elections where the Conservatives lost massively, where they said, no, that was because we did not go into the environment, we engaged in massive climate skepticism, and the voters punished us for doing that. And yet they seem to be making the same mistake, which, as we've said before, as to quote Napoleon, while your enemy is making a mistake, don't interrupt them. But I feel that this is a good article to at least briefly just quickly look at some of the points that this local councillor from Wiltshire actually brings up. So, before we go, quickly just looking over this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. Even if you do just click the like and share button, like I say, it all helps. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and on with this. So, this, shockingly, comes from Conservative Home. But as we've said, this narrative that especially the Net Zero Scrutiny Group are desperate to try and sell, that we can't go into net zero. This is why we lost so many seats in the net zero. This is why you are seeing the new the ULEZ zones becoming, or at least they're trying to make this such an issue, forgetting the fact that Boris Johnson, who recently wrote an article in the Daily Mail about Sadiq Khan expanding these zones in London, seems to forget he was the one who introduced them. But this is again the crazy fracturing that is now going on in the Conservative Party. It's not just one fault line now; it is just expanding into multiple cracks, and some of these are just getting bigger and bigger along ideological lines and policy lines as well. And it is going to affect them for decades. But interestingly enough, you have a local Conservative here who has actually decided he's going to push back against this and say, no, that's not what happened. Now, first of all, good on this guy for saying that, because to be honest, we need more people looking and saying, I am pro net zero. We are pro going for bringing down our carbon, improving our environment, going down these good economic paths that we can do. And to be honest, that is a good thing. And as I've said this many, many times before, if someone from an opposite party is in favor of doing something and your policy which will have good outcomes, there is nothing wrong with working with them, even if they are a Tory. Shocking as that might be sound to some people, hey, if a Tory wants to, help decarbonize the steel industry, fantastic. Welcome on board. If they want to sort of help move the UK into a more, net zero future, hey, excellent. Welcome on board. There is nothing wrong with that. And I want to stress that. But of course, it obviously depends how you get there, what they want to do. And of course, maybe you're not going to agree on everything. But hey, if they're like, well, look, this is going to have good outcomes, and yeah, I'll vote for it. I might not agree with everything 100%. Well, hey, you've still got their vote, right? But interestingly enough, he brings up a lot of very interesting points, because there is actually a pro conservative made booklet called, where is it? Powers in Place, which is all about how local councils can have a roadmap for reaching net zero and how they can do it. And it's all about from how a local council can transfer to the net zero, how it can do it. Now, ultimately, it's from the Conservatives. I haven't actually 100% read it, so I don't know what's in it. But the fact that you've got a Conservative here arguing, saying, look, we've got all this stuff to help tackle climate change. We need to tackle this. We need to really go into, as he goes, this whole thing helped to shape Wiltshire Council's decarbonisation strategy, which, again, as he says here, has already seen the council reduce its emissions by 81% since 2014, saving us millions of pounds a year. So this is, to be honest, something that we should, once again, applaud them for doing. And to be honest, here's the thing. If we applaud them for doing it, that actually works in our favor, because what do you think all those other Tories are going to see if there's people on the left applauding this guy saying, good job for, doing this on net zero? That's only going to drive them further apart. So trust me, sometimes, applauding your opposition can have an interesting ripple effect. But the fact that, you've got this local council that decided to go in this direction, and they managed to get their emissions down by 81%. And in fact, I think he even says here, so yeah, and if they did this, this would help save local taxpayers 173 billion pounds, while delivering a 14 pound return investment for every £1 spent. That's a good investment. And if it helps save the environment, help get us towards net zero, that can only be a good thing. And even shockingly, as I said before, Green Tories, well, they exist. This is someone that you can sort of work together with to help, improve the environment. And yeah, they might be a Tory, but to be honest, if it's a good outcome, that's what at the end of the day can really matter. So This is interesting because, once again, it is the big questions that the Tories are afraid of really addressing, that they are afraid of really trying to provide answers to, because they don't even know how the hell to go about it. Trust me, we've got another article from Will Atkinson. We'll also be covering probably later on today as well. Saying that the Conservatives should double down on austerity. Interesting read, but we'll get to that probably later on today. But yeah, let me know what you think about this, because I think, to be honest, it's again kind of interesting that you're seeing Conservative push back against the narrative, especially from the net zero scrutiny group, that the whole reason that they lost the local elections, or they did so bad at the local elections, was because local Conservative councillors were supporting net zero ideas and policy. Let me know what you think yourself about that. Like I say, it's sort of interesting that you see this pushback. And I said it's only going to cause more fracturing in the Tory party. And I've said before, that's a good thing. So at the end of the day, that's only sort of good news for us. But also, it does open up, as I said, potential allies for, in your local council. Can you get green policies passed when maybe you have maybe it's a slight majority, Conservative council? Can you get green policies passed? And ultimately, according to this, it says yes, you can get green policies passed, even if your council, if that's of course, if your council is still predominantly Tory, and that you can even secure Tory votes to do some of this thing. So, like I say, I haven't seen this particular proposal, but if you are in the local council and you want to sort of maybe, should we say, get your fellow Tory councillors on board for net zero stuff, then it's probably worth a read, because then they might pique up interest if you're sort of maybe looking at this and picking stuff out, and they're like, oh well, we might actually vote for some of this net zero stuff now. So it's an interesting strategy, obviously, to go down. And of course, again, it helps you win votes. And at the end of the day, if you want to get stuff done, well, you've got to get the votes to be able to do it. So we'll see how this works out. But yeah, like I say, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.